All right, so we laid out the three different paths. Now let's talk through what happens when you actually sell. There's a good Coots research on 121 entrepreneurs who've been through exits. And it really goes through, hey, once the money lands, that's when the real challenges begin. So an entrepreneur who actually went through a liquidity event sent me this because this was a good, useful guide for him. So team this conversation up, Jim. 84% of entrepreneurs end up satisfied with life after exit, according to this research report, which is actually a lot higher.
Yeah, it's higher than I would have thought.
Some other data suggests. But what nobody will tell the entrepreneurs is that 40% who didn't plan regret it. And it takes 2 to 4 years to find the new identity. So it takes a lot longer for the entrepreneurs post-liquidity event to really kind of get into a groove than where they think what it's going to be. So just putting some of that, some numbers here. I'm going to put this chart up on the screen, but 57% of entrepreneurs, again, from this case or white paper here, who were selling, expected to really kind of settle into the new role and be happy within 1 year, less than 1 year, but only 40% achieved that. 5% expected it to take 2 to 4 years for them to really settle into kind of the new normal and be happiness. But in reality, there's 20% in that bucket. And then 0% of entrepreneurs who sold their business thought it would take 4 or more years for them to feel satisfied, where in reality, 7% of entrepreneurs who sell takes them 4 years before they feel satisfied with the decision that they made.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. And I'm sure it's true from my experience. That's what I've seen a lot. It's that kind of thing where the way you envision it seems like your problem is getting through the exit. Your problem is not after the exit, because you think after the exit, I have no problems. And then it turns out you've got to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? And I've heard that from several entrepreneurs. I can think of one in particular, sold his business. Guess what? His friends were working, his friends were running businesses. And all of a sudden he's like, well, I can't golf 7 days a week and there's no one to go hang out with because everyone's busy doing stuff and I have nothing to do. Well, that means that you've got to reinvent yourself. You got to think of something that you can do that you enjoy, that's meaningful. How are you going to spend your time? Because no one's just going to sit in a rocking chair and watch TV all day. And if you do, you'll be miserable and you'll die young.
Yep. And we got post-exit challenges. We're going to put up a visual right here. What you specifically went into was example number 5, or challenge number 5, which is finding purpose is more challenging than expected. And so, right, with the quote here, when you emerge from building a business, the things that motivate you will be quite different. And so one of the recommendations from this survey and from the publishers of this was budget 10% of your proceeds to figure it out, which is interesting. So whether that's, you think it's starting new businesses, following new hobbies, traveling more to see the grandkids, or whatever else it may be, carve a specific part of your budget out to just figuring it out. And then like having the autonomy to move flows and budget around to that avail. So that's challenge number 5. We start at the very top here of this visual. Number 1, you'll make more mistakes than you expect. This, I think, is overconfidence bias. Said another way, you have a successful liquidity event. The press release goes out. All of the bankers and investment advisors are calling you, wanting to manage your money, and your friends are asking you to invest in their business. So you feel like you're walking on water here. But in reality, maybe those skills that you created to have that successful liquidity event were very useful and applicable in the domain and where you were applying them, but doesn't necessarily mean it transfers into other facets of life or other businesses or ventures.
Yeah, I've seen this a lot, where an entrepreneur who's never had any money because all the money was in the business, they have a huge liquidity event, and all of a sudden they're an expert in private equity and venture capital and startups and all these in cryptocurrency. All these areas that all of a sudden they think they're experts, and other people treat them like they're experts because they had this big exit. So all of a sudden they have all this social proof and this social support that they know all these things. And I used to say that, and I could say it right now, that the biggest risk to an entrepreneur is startup and 3 years post-exit as far as their wealth building. Because I've seen so much money flush down the drain through bad investments and bad ideas. Now, if you've been siphoning money off over the years and you've learned and you have a team that's helping you invest and you have a good handle at it, you can take that exit and you can flow it right into your allocation. But if you haven't been doing that, you have to think, maybe you're not as smart as you think you are. And the challenge is, as entrepreneurs, we have to say yes all the time. Like, yes, let's try that. Yes, we can do that. And when you become an investor after an exit, you have to say no a lot. And so that's a new habit for entrepreneurs. And I also say you have to change from investing in possibilities to probabilities. The entrepreneur starts a business because he or she thinks this thing has a possibility. No one believes I can do it, but I believe I can do it. So they turn a possibility into this huge exit. So then they start looking for other things like that. Instead, they need to flip their perspective and start to look for probabilities. The things that will probably 10 years from now appreciate, the things that are probably going to make you money, not the things that possibly could make you money. That's a hard shift for entrepreneurs. Say no a lot and look for things that have high probabilities, not that have possibilities.
Yep, well said. And I think that dovetails exactly into challenge number 2. Your attitude to risk changes dramatically. And because to your point, you are the risk taker, you're the maverick when you're building your business. Post-exit, you've got this wad of money. You now want to make sure you preserve that and that you can achieve your goals, and you're not forced to expose everything. So that was a good job dovetailing right into my second challenge.
Yeah.
Third challenge here, walking away harder than you think. So 60% say it's harder than anticipated to leave the business entirely. As one entrepreneur was quoted, that never really goes away. Many always come back to business. So the passion that drove that success most likely isn't just going to disappear. So it's all about where are you instead going to be pointing that laser?
Yeah, and you know me well enough to know that's a challenge for me. I'm not a golfer. I don't have a lot of hobbies. I love the business. I love the people in our business. And for me to not be involved in the business, it would be hard for me to get my head wrapped around that. I do know that it's a time for entrepreneurs to find different things. And I remember I was on a flight sitting next to this guy in first class, and he had a business exit. And I was talking to him, and he said the first few years afterwards, he didn't know what to do. He had all this free time, and he really got depressed and bummed out. And he felt like I was this big, important person. Now nobody knows who I am. And then he started thinking about, well, what do I want to do? What should I, and as he thought about it, here was the really interesting thing. He said, I came up with some stuff that I'd never tried, but I thought I might like that. And I tried it. I said, give me an example. He said, ice skating. He said, I always thought ice skating looked interesting. Never learned to ice skate. So I thought, I'm going to learn to ice skate. And this guy was like late 50s. So I said, how'd that go? He said he was horrible for a long time, and then he got good enough, and then he joined a hockey league, and he said he's like in the worst of the hockey leagues, like the most terrible players, but he said he has the best time. He has all these relationships with these guys he plays with, and I said, wow, that's pretty incredible. He goes, now I'm going to learn to play guitar. So, that's the other thing too, is you don't have to think so linearly like nobody knows who I am. Do something interesting, go serve in a charity or volunteer or learn a new skill like ice skating or playing guitar. And that was a key to his actually having success after the success of the exit.
Yeah, and him getting fulfilled based off of what is going to fulfill him making a decision, an independent decision, and not essentially measuring himself to external people or achievements, but really finding that internal peace and that internal happiness. That's the cool part about that story.
Yeah, none of his friends said, hey, you should try to learn to ice skate. You've never ice skated. Try to join a hockey league. It was just what he came up with. And so some of that can be great to do some soul searching, find out some ideas of experiences that you can have in your life.
Yep. Okay. Last challenge 4 here, since we kind of reverse order. It takes longer than you think. I think this is very important for entrepreneurs, just to reset expectations, of give yourself grace. It could take 2, 3, 4 years before you settle into a group, just like the guy that you were sitting next to. It took him a few years to kind of figure it out. I think oftentimes entrepreneurs want to immediately have the game plan set up of I'm going to go golfing on these days and then travel and do this. And then after 3 months, it's like, all right, I need to figure something else out. And that's where just giving yourself grace and setting expectations and going on a sabbatical is very smart and intentional. So then that way you can figure out, hey, where are my passions actually lying?
Yeah, it's a good exercise is to create some white space in your calendar. Even if you're running your business, you need some white space to think and to plan. And whether it's pre or post exit, if you don't have any white space in your calendar, it's going to be hard for you to actually create the life that you want.
Yeah.